ideally, everyone can squat full range of motion, but realistically, not everyone can.
Yep.
So certainly encourage them to get into full range of motion. We're working towards that. So these guys say they've got a big injury profile. So it's not about squeezing performance out of them. It's about keeping them on the pitch so they can keep playing.
Longevity.
Yeah, longevity, robustness. It doesn't matter if they don't squat 250 ever again. It more matters that their knees are healthy, their ankles are healthy, and their lower backs are healthy. A big week might be through pre-season 25 to 30. So then if they're covering, if I see 3Ks of high-speed running, I'm like, oh, wow, that's solid. I know you're working very hard, I know you're getting fitter.
Right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Strength Institute podcast. I have got with me today the most requested guest. All right, he has now not only been on once, he's not done to the double. This is his three-peat visit. The three-peat, everybody. I've got Louis Dallimore, the strength and conditioning coach for the Kintetsu Liners, a professional rugby union team in Japan. Welcome, Louis.
Thanks for having me on, Nev.
Yeah, my pleasure. Louis is going to be on. We're going to be talking about, a whole bunch of things rugby-related today. But before we start, if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, and help this channel grow. I appreciate it. But Louis, welcome back to Australia, mate. How long are you here for?
Thanks, Nev. Just a short off-season this year, so about 3 weeks back in Perth.
3 weeks only?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, we didn't have a great season, and it was teams go train harder, not smarter.
Okay.
And get back to work as soon as possible.
All right, so let's dive straight in. Let's talk about your last season first. What you think went wrong, where you think you guys are going to make changes this season. For everyone that's watching or that plays rugby, be interested to know, what the people focus on to improve in the off season.
Yeah, sure. So we had a really rough season. We only won one game in season, and then we had
how many games are in season?
It was 16 rounds.
Okay.
And we had to play off for relegation, which luckily we won. So we stayed up in First Division.
Yeah.
But this was our first year back in First Div in the new competition in Japan, and we just struggled, I think, in the contact area and the intensity of the game.
Okay.
So in Second Div last season, or 2 seasons ago, we were a very dominant team. You're beating teams by 60 points. You're really not challenged physically. And then this year we've stepped up, and it's just a whole different challenge. And a lot of our younger guys had never played at that level. They're not used to that level. You were playing teams, you look at Kubota, they've got, say, Malcolm Marks, the Springbok. He's 124 kilos, and we've got a Japanese guy who's 90 kilos, and he's got to try and tackle him, and he can't.
Right.
And we lose.
Okay.
So we need to recruit bigger guys, bigger humans, and we also need to just condition ourselves and get ready for that next level of contact and intensity in rugby.
Yeah, right. So I guess if you're analysing the season, so that's the first thing you came up with was a lack of intensity or sort of getting dominated a bit at contact time. How about general sort of workload? Like, because your background, you were big on the GPS data as well. So are you seeing a big difference between Division 2 and Division 1 in terms of how much these guys are moving around? Like, are they having to go further in games? Is that then like depleting the gas tank and that's why they're getting pushed around at contact time? Or what have you sort of noticed from that sort of statistics?
Yeah, not really. So last year, like for example, we beat the team called Kamashi, and we put about 90 points on them. This is in Second Div. And because you're running so much during the game, you're running through them and just running and scoring tries and running back to the halfway line, the running load's really, really high.
And that's the same, like, because you break it down not just total distance, but also like sprint meters, jog meters.
So high-speed running, your number of accelerations, players' percentage of the top speed they're reaching, any metric you want to measure can be really, really high in Second Div. So the running load, the running intensity in a game in Second Div is still really high.
Okay.
Coming into First Div, it can be the same or a bit less just because the contact component and the intensity of the physical battle is so much more. So there can be bigger guys, and for us, it was more time defending rather than running through teams.
Yeah.
So the running load isn't really an issue. It was just more the physical side of things.
Yeah, and I think that everyone that's played rugby knows that if you have to defend for a long time, it's just damaging. It's always harder to get up and move backwards and get ready to tackle again. It's always harder to go easier to go forwards in those situations.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. So total running load, pretty similar or comparable at least.
Yeah.
But it's just really that at the contact area.
Yeah.
So to address that, obviously recruitment's always important. are you looking at does that change how you approach your gym sessions as well? Like, are you going to be trying to put more mass on these guys, or are you just looking to recruit bigger guys, or are you looking at doing more contact specific like drill training? So where does that balance come from for you?
Yeah, I think it's got to be all three.
Yep.
So I think we need to assess that, hey, the contact side of things defensively wasn't there, or in attack, we weren't punching holes through these guys and we weren't stopping them. So some of that is, so the younger Japanese players, if they're only 80 kilos, they do have to get bigger. So we do have to try as hard as we possibly can to put weight on these guys. So that could be through pre-season, more gym sessions, bigger gym sessions, higher volume training. We provide them with food. So they'll have a big gym session. They go into lunch, which is a buffet style, so they can eat as much as they can.
Nice.
So
do you track that sort of thing? So do you say, hey guys, you should be having this many calories a day, or you just sort of unleash them on their own?
So we have a nutritionist, and she'll work with the players as a group, but then also individually. So if there's people that need to gain weight, she'll sit down with them and talk to them about what they do. Generally speaking, like a rugby player might not be the same as someone who's really into fitness and someone who's going to weigh all their food and track their macros. However, what they can do is just take photos of their food and discuss it with the nutritionist. So this is my typical breakfast, this is my typical dinner, this is what I have for lunch, these are my protein shakes, whatever it is, and then she'll make some recommendations based on that. So, hey, more protein here and here and here, or we need you to gain weight, we're going to have some more carbs here and here and here. So that is something we definitely keep track of.
Yeah.
And then guys, we measure their body weights and monitor their body weight and body composition throughout the season.
Okay. And with their gym sessions then, so if these guys are going to be eating a bit more, trying to put on a bit of weight, and you said you might give them an extra, so longer gym sessions, a bit more volume, try to sort of build up a little bit in the off season. How are you approaching that in terms of per player? Is it a per player, everyone gets their own individual plan, or is it more by playing group? Is it a little bit more generalized? So it's like your tight five, hey guys, we're doing this sort of work. How are you splitting that up within the team?
Yeah, so it's not just on position, because you could have two wingers, for example. One needs to be bigger and stronger. One needs to be leaner and faster. So they could have very different goals, even though they're the same position. So we usually just base players based on a group of their goals. So we have a group at the moment of hypertrophy players, typically the younger Japanese guys. Doesn't matter what position they are, but they need more muscle mass.
They're all a bit undersized?
Yeah, they're all a bit undersized.
Yeah.
So we're going to smash them in the gym. So their program will be higher sets, higher reps, sets of 5 sets of 10, 4 sets of 12, those sorts of higher hypertrophy, your typical almost bodybuilding style program.
Yep.
We might have guys that are, their body weight's fine, like they're big units, they're powerful units, so we keep them on more of a strength and power program. We do have some guys that are older, so they might be on more of a age-specific...
The out to pasture program?
Yeah.
What's the age-specific program?
The over 35s
So
program.
just what, like less plyometric-y and sort of explosive work and just a bit more general strength? Or?
Yep. So maybe, so there's guys say they've got a big injury profile. So it's not about squeezing performance out of them. It's about keeping them on the pitch so they can keep playing.
Longevity.
Yeah, longevity, robustness. It doesn't matter if they don't squat 250 ever again. It more matters that their knees are healthy and their ankles are healthy and their lower backs are healthy.
Yeah.
So that might be a different program where just more unilateral work. There's more coordination, balance work. There's just things that are better suited for them. Rather with these young guys, we're pushing them in the gym. Let's put 10 more kilos in that bar this week. Let's go harder, heavier, more volume. And then as they get that over... we've got some guys that are well into their 30s, and then probably a lower total volume of work because they might not be able to recover as well as a 23-year-old. And then just more specific for their bodies. Yeah.
Talking about that, what's the sort of average age group that you're dealing with now at a professional level there, or in your team at least?
So in Japan, we get guys out of university, so it's similar to, say, an American professional football where they come out of college.
Yeah.
So in Japanese rugby, they'll go through university, and they have university rugby, which is really, really big for them. What uni did you go to? Where did you play? Who did you play with? And then they go into professional league. So they come in and they're 23-ish years old. Typically, their training background isn't high because they've had a squad of, say, 100 plus. So they've just been... There's been no...
The college team will be 100 plus.
At the university level.
Gee, that's a big... That's pretty impressive. I didn't realise there was that sort of draw to rugby in Japan.
Massive, huge.
Really?
And so they haven't really been anything. It's just been very general, just playing rugby. There's usually some injuries that come through. So then we get them into our program, and we hopefully try and put some weight on them, build them up. We do get some guys that are big and strong. Definitely, there's some Japanese guys that are like equally as big and as strong as you. Significantly big guys.
I'm actually on a cleansing weight cut right now, so you know.
We've got some like Japanese back rowers. One guy's 107 kilos. Yeah. He's lean, he's fast, he's powerful, he's strong. He's what you'd want from a professional rugby player.
Yeah,
and
great.
there is also those smaller guys. So on age profile, so we have that end of things. So there's 22, 23-year-olds. They've recruited some young guys out of Australia. So if you're in Japan for 5 years, you then qualify as being Japanese. So if you're 19 and maybe don't have an opportunity to play professionally in Australia, and a Japanese club approaches you and says, hey, you could come up here 5 years. By the time you're 24, you're actually Japanese. You can be making really, really good money.
Yeah.
And you can have a full career, long-term career here.
I think, I don't know if you're familiar with Brent Murphy, who played at Basing and then at UWA. His older brother did that. I think he played in Japan for quite a few years and was considered a local at some point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. So how many years have you been there?
I've been there for 8 years.
So you're like, have you get yourself your dual citizenship? What's going on here?
No. You can't. I don't think you can have dual citizenships in Japan.
Really?
Yeah, it's like you're either Japanese or you're not.
Japanese or bust.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, that's I thought you'd come back and have get a Japanese passport, and,
No, I'm an Australian.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't qualify as Japanese.
Right. You're just a foreigner. You're just one of
a
those
foreigner.
foreigners over there stealing local jobs. No, I was kidding. No, that's good. That's interesting. With your exercise selection, because this is one that I wanted to get into as well, and how you perform your exercises. For example, let's say back squatting. Super important for almost every position, I would assume, right? Good full body strength, good quad drive, hip drive, all these things that are really important for a rugby player. How do you assess how they squat to a certain standard? And what I mean by that is, I know at the Force for a while, the Western Force, they were using the gym aware, and they were looking at total dip, so the centimeters moved. It was like you've got to move at 50 centimeters. But if you're really short versus really tall, that's obviously really different. You have people that have different length legs that some might do a really sit back squat, like powerlifting style, that really struggle to get below parallel. And some of those guys are really short femurs that can just do an ass to grass vertical, really high bar squat. So do you try to take a player by player approach on that? Or do you have, like, you say, hey, just squat how it feels comfortable? Like, do you have to ever be like, hey, man, that's a quarter squat, that doesn't count, like squat properly? How do you deal with different players when it comes to like holding certain standards in the gym? Because obviously their primary job is rugby player, not squatter, not deadlifter. But those things still go hand in hand with developing that strength, that size. So how do you sort of monitor that with your players?
Yeah, there's a few different areas. When I was first up there, I had the opinion everyone's got to squat full range. Everyone's got to squat ass to grass. And you're going through this process, and there might be a guy who's, say, over 30, and he's never squatted ass to grass in his life. And then here I am forcing him into these positions with load, and the lower back goes. Yeah. And so now I'm injuring people's lower backs because I think they need to be squatting full range of motion. Ideally, everyone can squat full range of motion, but realistically, not everyone can.
Yep.
So certainly encourage them to get into full range of motion. We're working towards that. If they can't, if they're really jammed up through their hips or their knee or their ankle or something, what I'll do is get them to do, say, a single leg pistol squat that is full range of motion. I'll get them to do something that is a very full range of motion, but it possibly is unloaded. But I'm still taking their body, their knee, their hips, their ankles through that full range of motion. And then we'll get the load through something like a trap bar deadlift or a box squat. It's not ideal, but it's practical to a rugby player that has a lot of injuries, and they've had knee injuries, ankle injuries. They might have never squatted full range before. So ideally, so look, I'd work with just the individual. Do they have that range of motion? Can they achieve that? If they can, great. We are squatting. There's no quarter squatting. We're not doing that. So most people can at least get some sort of half squat, even if they have tightness.
Yep.
But yeah, I've learned the hard way just not to force every single person into a full squat.
Yep.
Because not everyone can. And then there'll be some sort of weak link somewhere that will go.
Yep.
It's usually their lower backs.
Yeah, right.
So if that situation, they go with the lower back, I'm like, okay, we're going to do, where you get a TRX and you hang off that, or use something to support yourself and do a full range pistol squat. So we're getting full ass to grass and then we're getting the load, some sort of heavy stimulus through, say, a trap bar deadlift or on the high handle. So it's a limited range of motion, but we're still getting that heavy load. But it should be a safe range of motion for them. And then in an unloaded position, we're achieving that full range of motion. So then I just kind of break it up into those two parts.
Yeah, right. That's a good way to go about it, I guess, because, I mean, you sort of have to have that individual approach, but you also want to have a high standard across the whole squad.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good. If you were, and you've touched on injury, we'll talk about injuries in a second, prevention and sort of mechanisms about how you sort of improve there. In terms of rugby, if you had to pick like a handful of exercise selection that every rugby player should be comfortable with or familiar with, that they can work on in the gym, especially for up-and-coming rugby players as well, like what would your top 5 be and why?
Yeah, so there's definitely, I don't think there's any exercises that you have to do. Like, I think of some of the guys in my squad, either Japanese or foreigners, and maybe they're just a bit older. And as I said before, like they might never squat again, but they can still play professional rugby. They just have to modify things. So you could look at not specifically exercises, but general movements, like, for example, a hip hinge. So it could be an RDL, that could be a good morning. It could be something just where you're hinging your hips. So typically everyone in my squad will be doing RDLs, but if for some reason they can't, we'll still get some sort of hip hinge exercise in. And then, so we're talking about squats. So it could be a squat. Then I've had a guy he had a lower back herniated disc, not from squatting, but just from general rugby. So he doesn't squat, but he might front squat. He might split squat. So he might do some exercise where he's bending his knees basically and his hips simultaneously.
Yep.
We'll do something unilateral. So that could be a walking lunge, a split squat, a rear foot elevated or front foot elevated split squat. And then with upper body movements, just generally speaking, a push and a pull. So not everyone can bench press, or not everyone can overhead press. Is very commonly, say in rugby, is just a tight shoulder.
Tight shoulders or like slap tears, labrums, all that sort of stuff.
And just anteriorly tight, so they're like this. So they can't get their arms up. So trying to make them do an overhead press and they end up doing this.
Yeah, leaning way back and cooking their backs as well.
So a dumbbell press, an incline press, a bench press, and then some sort of pull. So that could be a chin up, a row, any rowing variation. There's hundreds of them. So rather than saying specifically, they have to bench and squat and chin up, it's, let's do a push and a pull. But how can we work that in with your body?
Okay. So, all right. So in terms of upper body, you're looking at a push, you're looking at a pull. Lower body, you're looking at a squat and a hinge. And then some sort of like unilateral work.
Yeah.
So just individual legs, individual leg, component.
Yeah.
What about sort of like plyometric work? Would that just slot into those categories? So like, hey, we want you guys to be explosive as well, not just strong. So, jump squats, box jumps, all that sort of stuff, bounds. Would you just include, all right, well, your plyo box jump is just going to be a squat movement basically because you're squatting down, doing a counter movement jump up. Would that be counted in that? Or do you sort of look separately and say, hey, this is strength training, now let's look at plyometrics. Do you approach them differently?
Yeah, so we'll work plyometrics in through the week in a gym scenario. And we approach it from a few different ways. So there's plyometrics that are very quick on the ground, your typical plyometrics, so like a rebound jump or a depth jump where you're hopping or bounding, or you're springing from your feet, or you're using your ankles. There's other things just like a standard, say just a standing broad jump. You wouldn't classically call that a plyometric, but it's still a lower body power development movement. There's things like Olympic lift variations where you're really driving the power through your legs. So we sprinkle them in through the week. We'll have plyometric exercises through the week, say a hurdle bound. That could be single leg, double leg, big hurdles, small hurdles. There could be things like starting from a seated box jump. So you're starting from a seated position and then just driving up, which doesn't involve any sort of counter movement jump. So there's a number of different plyometric exercises, and we'll use them as a variety of them through the week. Typically in a week, if we have a game on a Saturday, the Thursday gym session we refer to as a spark up, and there's usually more plyometric or power type exercises on that day. So we're not looking at.
So this is mid-season, during season?
Yeah, through the season.
So game Saturday, and then Thursday's the last gym session, so lighter, a bit more dynamic.
We're not going to be doing 10 sets of RDLs or not anything like really heavy and eccentric component. We're going to do things that are lighter, faster, and a minimal eccentric component. So the eccentric or the lowering of the weight usually makes you a bit sorer and a bit more fatigued. So not that you can't do any, but we'll just do a smaller amount of that on a Thursday, and we'll do more power-related things. So we might do a push press with a hurdle bound. We might do a high pull. We might do a power clean, those sorts of movements. We also might do a little bit of heavy legs, might do a 3x3 front squat, something like that, but just a minimal amount of heavy, more on the power side of things. Going back through the week, so if they start the week on a Monday, they've had a game on a Saturday, more general movement. A lot of the guys will be quite sore, fatigued. Try and take them through those large ranges of motions we spoke about. So like an overhead squat, even just with a broomstick. Some of those, like a walking lunge, just to get movement through the hips, through the legs. Tuesday is your main sort of strength hypertrophy day. So we are doing more sets, more reps, heavy weights. You might be doing 5 sets of squats or bench press or those sorts of things.
Yeah. So really during season, it's quite limited. It's only 3 sessions really in the gym. You got one sort of recovery lighter session, one main session, and one sort of bit faster, more dynamic session that's light again.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this before, either on the first or the second podcast that we've done together, because this is our 3rd podcast, everyone. That you said that the rugby players generally going to be the weakest if they are towards the end of the season, right? Because they've had this whole season of getting beaten down physically on the field and is not conducted to having strong and numerous gym sessions during the week. So during the season, you have those 3 sessions, one main, one dynamic, one a little bit of recovery, just to sort of try to maintain their performance during the season, get that longevity out of them. So coming into off season now, does that increase up to 4 times a week? Is it player specific? How are you approaching that?
Yeah, definitely. So off season now, so that young group that I spoke about, they'll be in the gym 5 times a week.
Yes,
so we'll have
good.
5 hard bodybuilding style gym sessions.
Right.
So it's going to be like, say, upper, lower, maybe another upper. So we're just smashing them in the gym because there's not a high. There'll be a little bit of running because you want them to maintain their fitness. Mm-hmm. But for those guys specifically, I'm not too worried about their fitness. I know they'll get fit through preseason. What I am worried about is them taking some time to dedicate to putting on some size and some mass.
Yep.
Other guys, say if they're not in that group, they might be 4 times a week. So we still want them to build as much strength and muscle as possible throughout the season.
Yep.
Sorry, to have
through the off season to go into the season with.
Yep.
Yeah, right. Interesting. You're talking about maintaining their fitness now as well. Two different pathways, I guess. You got your old school style where you would just flog people lap after lap for conditioning. Sprints and sprints and sprints. Which might still have its place sometimes. I guess you still see rugby league guys doing. Is it the Bronco test?
Yeah. We did the
Bronco test as well,
yep.
which is actually quite a bit of running in one shot.
1.2 Ks.
1.2 Ks, right? But also in more recent years, I say recent years, at least the last decade, there's been a much bigger emphasis on small gameplay. So small game drills to really get the heart rate up, whether that's touch or some sort of variation or some sort of variation or limited contact, but things that you can do at a really high intensity for 5 to 10 minutes to work. How do you guys decide what's best? What sort of fitness and condition do you guys implement for your squad?
So typically, say in season, we won't do much, if any, straight line running. Certainly not as a whole group. We don't get the whole group together and just run shuttles backwards and forwards. There may be times, so if you've been on the bench and you've only played 10 minutes and there's only one of you, it's hard to play a small-sided game with one person. So it's like, okay, mate, we're going to have to do some top-up running to get your volume where we need you to be. So if we look at a week, this is just a very rough example. We want you to hit about 20 Ks of running and we want you to hit around 2 Ks of high-speed running. Might be 130 accelerations or whatever it is.
Are these real numbers or you just pointed out?
Very generally real numbers.
So you're just talking about, but does that change for position as well?
Yeah, to change for position.
All right. So if you're looking at a back rower versus, let's say a back rower versus a tight 5.
Yeah.
What sort of range would they be expected to be running in a week?
And
I only say this because, and I mean this, is because forwards win games, not backs. All right, let's continue.
Mate, this is from the professional rugby. They say forwards win games.
That's right.
But the back's determined by how much.
Correct. Yeah.
So you need a big forward pack.
You need a strong forward pack. So
like
all right. So if you got a tight 5 versus a back rowers, on average, how many Ks a week are they expected to be running in the off season or during the season? Let's say.
So back rowers are usually right up there with centres. They're usually the fitter guys on the team. Mm-hmm. They get through a lot of work, but then they also are bigger bodies. So they can be some of the better athletes going around because they're bigger, but they're running just as much as
I would say that's highly probable.
some of the backs.
Yeah, the back rowers are the best athletes of the team. Yeah.
Big units.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at, say through pre-season, prop might be somewhere around 20, depending on how big they are. Like if they're 130 kilos, they might not get 20 Ks. Maybe they're 17, 18 Ks. And then as a percentage of high-speed running, so just to make it easy, if it's 20 and 2 Ks of that is high speed, that'd be a heap for a prop. For a prop, maybe it's closer to, this is through pre-season, say 1,500 metres, even a K.
So you're looking at like somewhere in that 7 to 10% of your total volume would be at high speed?
Yeah, for a prop.
Yep.
Backs, more like over 10, so 12 to 15%. So back, a big week might be through pre-season 25 to 30. So then if they're covering, if I see 3 Ks of high-speed running, I'm like, oh, wow, that's solid. I know you're working very hard. I know you're getting fitter.
Right. And you're tracking that all with GPS.
Yep.
Yeah. And then how many sessions is that spread across? Because 20 Ks even for a prop, that's a fair distance, Is that across like 4 field sessions, 3?
So we'll have... Is this in pre-season we're talking about?
Let's go pre-season. Let's go pre-season first, and then we can talk about during the season as well.
Probably 6 sessions.
6 sessions pre-season.
And we 2 double days in there. So a unit's in the AM and a team session in the PM.
Okay. So somewhere between 3 and 4 Ks per session in that case.
For a prop, yes.
For a front row, yeah.
Correct.
Okay. All right, interesting. And then how does that change when you're going into season then? So pre-season, they're hitting the gym 5 times a week. They're hitting 5, 6 field sessions a week.
Yeah.
And then in the season, that changes down to 3 gym sessions roughly, and how many field sessions?
So we'll still have a Monday team session, which is generally a bit lighter. Tuesday, and every team can be different. Some people do it together, some people split it up. But we'll do an AM units and a PM team. Now, in that AM unit, speaking of conditioning, we may get the forwards to top up with a little bit of running, as in some shuttles. For example, running 6 50-metre efforts.
Yeah.
So it's talking about like 3 minutes of work. So we're not flogging guys with straight line running. The reason we don't use small-sided games, to go back a subject, always, is that...
So you don't use small-sided games at all?
No, we do.
Okay,
a lot. Or it's just training, rugby training.
Yes, rugby training. Yes,
small-sided games, really. So we get our main conditioning from 15 on 15 rugby. And then we analyse that GPS. Are guys working hard? Yes, they are. Great. We don't need to do any more fitness. That would be ideal. But then there's guys, say they're a bench player, or if they're maybe a bit lazy and they haven't worked hard in that small-sided game, but when you do make them do straight line running and you're saying get from here to here in 8 seconds, they just have to work hard. So there are a few situations where we do straight line running to top up, or shuttles or repeat sprints. But majority, the 90% of our work comes from rugby training.
Yeah, okay. And
then we're measuring that through the GPS.
Perfect.
So I got off topic there. What was the?
No. That's basically what I was after there. I think that's a good way to go about it, because you want to be as specific as possible, and there's nothing more specific than actually training rugby, is there?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that is good that they both have their role there. Yeah. Injuries.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked about, before we get to injuries, one more bit before injuries, we'll talk about how you're going to approach improving at the contact zone. We've talked about putting on more size and more mass, but also how are you going to be adjusting the actual, the rugby training to focus on that? Like, does that mean just more of the time is dedicated to contact type drills? Because of that fine line to walk of doing more contact, you're elevating your risk of injury.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Contact by its nature is carries inherent risk, right? Yeah. So how do you balance that? Have you had a talk with the other coaches about how that's going to look this next season?
And that's for probably each team to decide individually. And it is for someone like myself to discuss with the head coach or the defence coach how much is the right amount. And it's always a balance. There might be some weeks, might be a 6-day turnaround, maybe you had a bad loss and you've got a short week, so you're missing one of those sessions, and you think, hey, we're actually not going to do any full contact in training this week because these guys have had to travel, they've been smashed on a Sunday, they've had to catch a plane, we're then training Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we're playing again on a Saturday. Where do you fit full contact into that week? Or maybe you don't. But you could still do contact skill work, which is what, in that situation, what we would do. So it might be on the pads, or it might be just one-on-one tackling technique, like contact preparedness. But yeah, it is a balance to find like how many minutes. We call it red contact, as in full contact, live contact. How much you do. What does that look like? Is it full field? Is it 15 to 15 full contact? Is it 1-on-1 full contact? There's pros and cons to both. So there might be a thought that would say, hey, we'll just do 1-on-1 because it's a smaller setting. But if it's 1-on-1, I know that I'm just going to smash you. And it's going to be big contact because you're not passing, you're not running, you're just running at me and
right.
I'm going to whack you. If it's, say, 10-on-10, you've got a part of the field, well, it's like, I don't know if you're going to offload, if you're going to pass, you're going to step, like, I don't know what you're going to do. So it's a bit more game-like. But then maybe there's higher speeds involved and bigger distances. So maybe then there's more risk in that. So it's about finding the right drill. What's the team poor at? Is it 1-on-1 tackles for just these 5 guys? Then maybe they do more of that. Yeah.
Is it ruck at the ruck or in the mall?
Yeah. Breakdown work. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I guess move into injury and injury prevention. So I know we've talked about before as well. You had a couple of tests like repeated jump tests to sort of see, if someone's performance is starting to dwindle down a little bit, that they're maybe at a slightly higher risk of getting injured. What sort of protocol do you and the team and the management use in there to sort of assess if players are close to injury, and how do you sort of manage those players? Yeah.
Well, so we use every day the players fill in some software. They've got an app on their phone, and we use Kitman Labs, and they will say, hey, I'm feeling sore, tired, fatigued. So we look at this data first thing in the morning as a medical team. Hey, who's sore, who's tired, who's telling us that they're fatigued. There's a little like a body map on there they can press like their hamstrings and say these are 10 out of 10 tightness and soreness. If that comes through, we'll go and speak to that player and maybe we modify their training. Might be their running load. Maybe if we did have some of that conditioning, maybe they're just out of that. Could we modify the gym session? So, he's telling us that his legs are absolutely cooked and we've got a heavy squat session. Well, let's modify the gym session so he's not completely cooked.
So first protocol is first person feedback from the player themselves.
Yep. Of note is that different players report different things pretty consistently. So you might get people that are high reporters or low reporters. So my 5 and your 5 could be completely different.
Right.
And so you get guys that come through and they're all red, but they're all red every day. They've had 3 days off and they're all, I'm a 5, I'm a 10 out of 10 for soreness and fatigue. And you think, well, you're fine.
Yeah.
Keep going. Or then there's guys that are always going to just put 1s, even though they are
carrying injuries.
Yeah, they're sore and they're tired, but then for them it's like, no, I'm a 1 out of 10. So you just need to be aware of those individuals.
And that's where some more like metric data could be handy?
Yep. So we would look at, say, acute to chronic ratios. So if for a long period of time you're always reporting 1s, but then you report a 3, well, then that's going to be a bit of a spike for you as an individual. But then there might be someone that always reports a 5. So even though the guy reports a 5, the 5 is higher than the 3. But for you, a 3 is high.
It's a big jump, yeah.
It's a big jump. But for this guy, the 5 is his baseline. So how far off from baseline are you? And then we also look at musculoskeletal screening. So we'll do things like a sit and reach test, knee to wall test, and a jump test. So
how often do you do those?
We'll do that every first day of the week. So usually every Monday.
Yep.
So they come in, they've had a game on a Saturday, they've had Sunday off. Monday morning, team training. Before that happens, they'll be doing, say, a sit and reach, like a hamstring flexibility check, left leg, right leg, double leg. And then we review that data. Are you, say, 10% down or 30% down on last week? Well, maybe your body's tightened up, you haven't recovered properly. Let's look at this. Or are you're on par with every week? So there's that side of things. There's also looking, analysing the GPS data. So if you've had some weeks and you're 20Ks, 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 and then last week you've gone and hit 30Ks, well, first of all, that shouldn't happen. But if it did happen, we're like, okay, so that would, again, spike this acute to chronic ratio. So a long-term average versus a short-term. So your long-term average is 20. Now you've had this spike of 30. So that would be 50% increase. So I'm just doing some mental math here.
That's all good, yeah.
And so that would give you a 1.5. So ideally, we want to keep you below 1.3.
Okay.
So you're
30%.
30%.
30% is your range for distance, for like GPS data.
Yep.
Do you carry that 30% across in volume for gym, for example? Because I think I remember reading some old literature quite a while back that would say, you're putting yourself at increased risk of injury if you start to go like 15% jumps or above, 15, 20% more volume per week.
In volume, yeah, definitely. So we wouldn't look to push the volume much more. It can be different with the gym volume, because if you go from 3 sets to 4 sets, now you've done a 20% increase in volume.
Yeah.
But realistically, it sounds like a lot, but it's like just one extra set.
Right.
But yeah, that is monitored. We don't want to have some huge spike in, say, number of sets of lower body. If we've been going along and you've been doing 15 sets a week of legs every week, 15 sets, and then we make you do 30 sets of lower body in a week.
Right.
That's going to be double your workload.
Yes.
And that's going to be an issue.
Okay. So you are looking at that volume increase for weights. You're looking at a volume increase for running. What about your your sit and reach tests and your repeated jump tests and those sort of tests? What sort of decrease are you looking at that puts you in a red zone? Look at this player.
So we can look at say a standard deviation from the mean. So if you're one standard deviation from your average, and then we've got some software that calculates this for us. So I don't sit with the calculator.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So we'll look at a standard deviation, or it could be say 20%. Might get highlighted as yellow, and then 30% is red. And it lets us go and have a conversation with that player. And then if that comes up and you think, let's relook at his GPS data. Is that all fine? How about his game load? Was his game load on par with other game loads? Because sometimes you think, he's reported a bit more soreness, but looking at all these numbers, everything's fine and he can just train. But other times, we'll modify people. And it can be heavily, we can just rule them out of a session and say, look, this and this and this has happened. We had a prop who was meant to play 40 minutes in a game and he ended up playing 80, and then so he's probably doubled his game load. There's been a number of other factors, and we've said this guy probably shouldn't be training today, or he's a risk, so he might just do some jog throughs and some walk throughs, and then that's it for his day.
Right. Okay. I guess touching on to a bit more into injury as well. This last season, Wallabies had a whole bunch of injuries. Wallabies being national Australian side, for those that are wondering, the Australian Wallabies, they had a whole bunch of Achilles tendons go, which was a bit strange because you might see one in the season, but they had, do you recall, was it four?
Yeah, they did have a lot, yeah.
Yeah. And you actually happen to be working with one of them who plays for the Kintetsu Liners, Quade Cooper, right? So were you involved in his recovery sort of this season from that injury? Did he have to have surgery? And sort of what was your approach to that? Because, Quade, for those that aren't familiar as well, is, bit of a standout player. He was, definitely a bit of a weapon, and he's had some injuries on and off, and he's still quite a high quality player. So how do you sort of approach that? Is he a marquee player on the team?
Yeah. He's definitely key for us.
Yeah.
So you'd add 3 international players on your team, as in that are capped from another country.
Okay.
And he's one of ours.
Yeah. So 3 marquee players. How many? Is there a certain quota of how many people have to be local as well?
Yeah. So you're only allowed 4 non-Japanese players on the field.
Okay.
But then what comes in is that you've got a number of these guys that have, say, been there for 5 years.
That
he's from New Zealand or he's from Australia.
Right.
He's been there for 5 years, so now he's Japanese.
Okay.
So while you might have 4 genuine Australians or South Africans on the field, you've then got other guys that aren't Japanese but are Japanese, and they're playing as well. Okay,
cool. So then cycling back to Quade then,
Yep.
How did you approach his rehab going into the season?
So it worked really closely with the Wallabies. They were excellent. They provided us with a lot of information, all the tools we needed, and I was guiding what was set from them. So they helped out massively. I'm not a physio, but I can definitely work in that space. So we took their lead on it, and we got him back to full strength. Excellent return to play. So he came back. There was a funny thing people may have seen where he played 1 minute of a game, or he played 30 seconds of a game. So we needed him to qualify. We knew he wasn't quite ready to play the game, but we needed him to play that game in order to qualify for our relegation games, which are very important.
Yeah.
So he literally walked on the field, kicked the ball, and then walked off.
Yeah, that's something that you'll see even in local rugby where you're trying to get players qualified for for second grade, you can play up, but you can't qualify down, sort of. So you'd have maybe a few first grade players kicking the ball for kickoff and then coming off,
leaving
right?
the field, yeah.
Okay, then leaving the field. Did he have to have surgery on his Achilles?
Yeah. So
was it a full rupture?
An Achilles, full rupture.
Full rupture.
An Achilles rupture is a pretty major injury for anyone.
Yes, it's the tendon that takes the most strain to the body.
Yeah.
If I'm
so when you're sprinting, you're putting up to 10 times your body weight through your Achilles.
Yeah.
So if you're a 90-kilo guy, it's 900 kilos of force through your Achilles when you're sprinting.
Yeah.
Quade's probably 92 kilos or so. It's a huge amount of force, and then when that ruptures, it's a huge cable spring in your body that has just snapped. So they had to surgically reattach it. It's a very long injury to recover from. But we had no issues along the way.
Yeah.
Full credit to him. Very dedicated to his rehab. Ran really well. Very applied. Strength training.
How do you approach a rehab? Do you look at trying to get range of motion back into that ankle first? Because it's been, I'm assuming, immobilized for quite a while.
Yeah.
So just like body weight, sort of like knee over toe work. You go into calf rate. Like, how do you sort of progress someone with an injury like that?
Yeah. So you'd look at range of motion's a big one. And in any injury, knee injury, elbow, shoulder, you look at trying to get achieve your range of motion. And then you look at strengthening that. So first step, we range of motion. Then we're looking at the strength in his calf and Achilles. And then we integrate the running. So by the time he came back to running, we knew he had great strength in his calf and Achilles. So we knew it wasn't going to be an issue. So rather than putting the horse before the cart and just get him running, it was, hey, well, let's get him as strong as possible through that part of his body. So literally like calf raises, weighted calf raises, single leg, straight leg, bent knee. And then integrate the running, and then very slowly, as we talk about that acute to chronic ratio, just build him back up. So someone that's starting from zero, if he hasn't run for 9 months, you've just got to start very slowly. It might be 1 kilometre a week, and then you gradually progress that volume and intensity up over time.
Yep.
And we got him back, and he played 60 minutes in the last game.
That's great.
Yeah, and he's excellent. It was really pivotal for our team.
How many seasons has he been with the Kintetsu Liners?
I think this is his fourth.
So you have a bit of background data in terms of what he was squatting or hex bar deadlifting or whatever before that. Yep. So that's how you know he's back up on par with where he was or beyond sort of where he was.
Yeah, and also big one for us is running intensity. So I knew what his max acceleration was before. You talk about acceleration, be heavy on Achilles plyometric ability.
Yeah.
And knew what his top speed is before. So we're going from that as a baseline. Where is he according to that? And so he got back, he was sprinting at, I think, 99% of his top speed, and his acceleration was about 98.5% of his best acceleration.
Yeah.
So we know that he's very, very, very good.
Yeah.
And that's to say the 100% score would have been once in 4 years. So then he's hitting 99, you know that he's
right there.
He's right there, yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great. This is a World Cup year, 2023. So does that affect your team at all? Like, does that affect how you guys go into the season? Are you going to be having players like Quade that are going to be getting pulled out? How does that sort of work?
Yeah, so most international teams this time of year now will be assembled as a group somewhere, and so we will be missing a few players. So we'll be missing probably 3 or 4 guys, and they're with the national team. They're not with us. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So they'll miss our pre-season and our sort of trial matches, or we might have probably be a pre-season cup, some sort of minor competition that's not the big leagues.
Yeah, sometimes they'll chuck a tens
before
a normal season here locally.
There'll be a sevens tournament.
Yeah.
There'll be,
Okay.
And then once those players come back, they'll usually get a little bit of a break, and they come back into the team, and it's usually like round 1, and they're just back into the team.
Okay, so it shouldn't be too disruptive for you guys then.
Yeah, it's just mainly through pre-season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. Well, is there anything else that we should be touching on while you're here? Because Louis doesn't come back all the time, guys. We only get him every once a year.
No, man, it's very, very comprehensive.
That's been everything?
Yeah.
Perfect. What do you think of the new studio, by the way?
I love it.
Louis' first one, there was no video. It was audio only.
No.
And the second one was at my house.
Yep.
In my living room.
That's right.
And now it's at the full studio.
I love it, mate.
Not bad, right?
Setup. Yeah.
Excellent.
Multiple camera angles.
That's it.
All the gear.
Cutting back and forth.
Yeah.
Look at this. It's amazing. Right? Picture in picture. Beautiful thing. Got the backdrop.
It's excellent.
Nice.
Handmade.
Yeah, very good. Awesome. Well, thanks very much for coming on. Appreciate it, as always. We'll be looking to get this one up in the next few days. But like I said before, guys, if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. Help that channel grow. And hopefully we'll catch Louis on the back end of a really successful next season up
Very
in Div 1s
successful.
again. We'll be bringing it in strong. All right? Awesome. I'll see you
mate.
next time, guys. Have a good one.